proceeds from the Great Wisconsin Quilt Show support PBS Wisconsin programming. Your financial gift helps make this event possible. Thank you.
Tihani washte, everybody. Leimie wigmuke washte na bani labo imachiapi so. Tayaya hippie. I'm glad you're here. My name is Bonnie Lebeau. My Lakota name, my given Lakota name is Wigmuke Washtewi. I'm a fourth generation carrier of that name. My grandmother gave it to me after I came home from the service. I served in the Navy for 3 years as a cryptologic technician. I have been quilting for approximately 28 years. This is my presentation, Align Yourself with the Stars. It's kind of like my tagline. I'm Lakota on my father's side, Dene, Navajo on my mother's side. So yes, this is me. A few of my hobbies. I like to occasionally jump on my motorcycle. It's a little different now that I'm 50. Yes, my sewing and my daughter's cat. So, like I said, my name in Lakota is Wigmuke Washtewi. I wanted to show you a map of what my father's people, the Lakota, the territory that we covered prior to colonization. We were a nation that was all the way from Canada all the way down to Oklahoma area, from Wisconsin all the way to the Rocky Mountains is what our territory we covered. So the Lakota Nation is one of three of what we call the Oceti Shakoi, and of course I'm Lakota. And within the Lakota Nation, there are different bands, and there are 7 of them. My family comes from the Ohunupa, and which translates to two kettle. So that's where my family is from. Currently, the Cheyenne River Reservation, where I grew up, born and raised, is approximately 3 million acres. We have the land base is probably about the size of Connecticut. We have 16,000 enrolled members, not all living within the boundaries of the Cheyenne River Reservation. The reservation was established in 1868, and I am proud to say that today my brother is actually the chairman. So, yeah, that's kind of a bonus. Within the boundaries of the Cheyenne River Reservation, when the reservation was created, the bands of the Lakota people dispersed throughout the territories of within South Dakota. My reservation, we recognize 4 of those bands, and you can see those on the flag in the lower right-hand corner. So with my presentation, Align Yourself with the Stars, I'd like to go over with you the beginning of the star quilt prior to its introduction to the Native people. And then I'd like to share with you a couple of short, brief Lakota star stories that correlate with the design of the star. And then I will go over with you the reasons and why and when we give a star quilt within my family. I will share with you my history, my family history, and then I have a little portfolio, and we will do questions after that. So in the beginning, prior to colonization, the Lakota people depended on the buffalo. Our societies actually mimicked the life of a buffalo, and the way that they lived on the prairie. So, like, for instance, a buffalo will have a calf every 2 or 3 years, and it is our custom to have a child within that time frame, so that your children are spaced within that 2 to 3 year period. I followed that with my kids. Sometimes I wonder still if that was the right thing to do. But yes, I had my kids young, so all my 3 kids are all over the age of 20. Another example would be that when the buffalo are under attack, they surround the youth, the female buffaloes, the wounded, the younger buffaloes will make a protection around them. And of course, that's what we did prior to colonization. That's what our warriors did for our women and children. So when after the Dawes Act in, I can't remember the year, but it's really hard to talk about. They wanted to get rid of us, basically. So they said, okay, well, we need to get rid of the buffalo. And that's what this picture correlates with. This first picture on the left, it is buffalo hides. I think there are about I believe it was 40,000 buffalo hides in this camp here. So you can imagine the amount of buffalo that roam the prairies. And in correlation, I cannot even fathom how many people passed away, of my people. The second picture, that's a picture of my daughter. We were visiting a museum, and of course, that's a famous picture, all buffalo skulls. So with the decline of the buffalo, which of course meant the decline of a people. So in the beginning, once the buffalo were starting to be hunted and shot, missionaries came to the area and they started schools for the young Lakota people, and not only the Lakota people, but the native population. On the right is a picture of this boarding school that my grandmother went to in South Dakota when she was 8 years old. She had 3 siblings, and they all went to this boarding school. The picture of the teepee is actually the woman that taught at the school. This is her collection of pictures in the Smithsonian. That's where I got these pictures from. So this was everyday life in what is called a boarding school. So they by law, sent their children to these missionary type boarding schools, and they stayed there for pretty much the full year. So if you can imagine sending your child away for a long time, throughout the whole year, not being able to touch them, hold them, kiss them. This was the life for many of our Native children from the age of 8 to you can see that these gals are probably teenage years, I suppose. And in my research, it states that for at least 1 hour of education, there was 3 hours of work. So you need to imagine actually how many how many hours of actual education these children got. This here is a different school. So like I said, 1 hour of education, 3 hours of domestic work to keep the boarding school running. But it did provide learning how to do the modern day sewing. All of the girls probably took classes, I suppose, on how to use a sewing machine and make different things. So when the missionaries came, it wasn't just the boarding schools that taught the children. They also recruited the women of the tribe to come and sew, and they had sewing circles. Of course, our women knew how to sew already, but of course with machines. And then with the missionaries, they brought what we now call the Lone Star design, which is the 8-pointed star. And if you remember, at that point in time, the buffalo were on the decline. And our people used the buffalo for everything. We used it for our shelter, we used it for our survival, for food, our clothing, everything revolved around the buffalo. So with the decline of the buffalo, we needed something to replace that. And when this pattern was introduced, it clicked, and we pretty much overed on the design, and that is because of the star. So we also call ourselves that we come from the Star Nation. And when we say Star Nation, that means the heavens, the stars, that we believe that is where we came from. And so when they introduced this pattern, it's somewhat of a geometrical pattern, and you can see how it correlates with the designs that we were already using. So easy to put a star into any part of those designs. So you could take this star and manipulate it. I don't have a picture of it, but you can do half diamonds, you could have the short way, you can do half diamonds the long way. And so it was very easy to manipulate this pattern with the designs that we were already using. So we come from the stars. We believe that when a baby is born, it comes from the heavens down to earth. So that Milky Way, when you see it, it makes this arc across the sky. And so the baby comes from the Milky Way, that path. Comes down to earth, and it receives a star coat. So throughout its life, there's different times that we would give the child, the young adult, the older person, a star quilt. That's what would be gifted. When we pass away, then, of course, we're going back to the stars. So then we make that journey back into the star, and we walk that path, and it's a circle. So it's just a continuous circle of life, I suppose. This other picture is a photo of the morning star. And it is considered by my people the most sacred time of the day. And it is when we like to get up and pray. I'm a morning person, so mornings are always my favorite. Nobody's awake except me. So it's a perfect time to meditate, say your prayers, smudge. So that's one story, the Milky Way story. And then we have the Big Dipper. So the Big Dipper has 7 stars, and there's a couple of different correlations between the number 7. So in my culture, we have 7 Lakota values, and each star would represent a value of generosity, humbleness, leadership, wisdom, and so forth. So each star represents in that way. Like I said before, we are called the 7 council fires. So that's the number 7. So this constellation is very important to my people. Let's see, there's one more. So another story is the story of Blue Woman. It was said a long time ago that there was a star in the middle of that cup. and it fell. So there's a woman, and her name is Blue Woman, and she sits in the middle of that cup, and when a baby is born, she's the one that lets it go through. When we pass away, she's also the one that lets you back on the other side. So she sits there, and there's also a joke in my family. Okay, if you haven't learned your lesson, she's going to kick you back down. So yeah, that's, I don't know if that part's true or not, but yeah, that's the Big Dipper story. So why we give? Like I said, when a baby comes to Earth, it is gifted a star quilt because we believe that they came from the stars. This little girl here, this chubby little girl, that's my daughter, my youngest daughter. At this point in time, I was probably quilting for maybe 10, 12 years, and she received actually about 4 star quilts. My son, however, received 1. So yeah, this is a picture of her. My grandmother gifted her this quilt. And then in the middle there, that is my nephew, Pierce. He is actually graduating Head Start. He completed 2 years of Head Start, and he wanted a quilt. So that was probably his second quilt that was gifted to him. I think it was Iron Man. There was an Iron Man theme or something. Yeah. And then the other little girl, that is also my niece. She wanted Frozen, I believe it was. Yeah. So the young ones, they get to pick out what theme they like at that point in time in their life, and I tried to accommodate that request. So early in life, birth time, they get a quilt, and then it just keeps rolling from there. Sport accomplishments. Our young people love sports where I live on the reservation. Basketball has always been the number one sport. So the gentleman on the right took his senior pictures with the quilt that his mother ordered from me. And those are our school colors. The girl on the left is his sister, and she was a cheerleader for 4 years in high school. And this was the last home game that she cheered at, and they honored her at the gymnasium with a star quilt. So that's another accomplishment that we like to honor. So when we say honor, that's exactly what it is. It's a accomplishment that our young people make, and we recognize that for encouragement, encouragement to keep going, to do good things for our people. Graduation is another accomplishment. This first picture on the left was an 8th grade graduation. That's my brother and I. We have 2 kids. He has a kid, I have a kid. They're both the same age. And they are on the right, Liana and Nation. So this was the 8th grade promotion ceremony that they have a big little to-do, and the 8th graders get quilts, and we honor them, sing them a song, and they move on to high school. The middle one is my cousin. We made her that quilt for her college graduation, her 4-year college graduation. Yes, graduation is actually the biggest time of the year. I have probably about 40 to 50 quilt orders for graduation. I start my orders right after Christmas. People have already put in orders for next year, so yeah, so you can imagine how hectic it gets right after Christmas. I have recently picked up a couple of orders from different schools. A school in Iowa last year ordered 50. The year prior to that, I think it was like a 35 order from somewhere in Minnesota. this is another 8th grade graduation. This is my nephew in the blue before the school year started. He said, "Auntie, I'm graduating 8th grade. I want a blue quilt," and that's what he got. The middle is a senior graduation. We have at my school, or at our local school, they have what they call the senior honoring. So they take a special day right before graduation, and they have a little powwow. The family presents them with quilts and a feather at that time, and we have a drum group, and it's just the gymnasium is full of quilts and graduates and good vibes and lots of singing. The other picture is my niece. She graduated, I think it's 8th grade. Yeah, that was this past year. My daughter and I were gifting her the quilt, and we wrapped them in the quilt and get our pictures and move on to the next graduate. Not only are graduations a time of honoring, but also, like I said, major accomplishments. The gentleman in the turquoise and black quilt, his name is Dr. Weasel, and he is a member of the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe, and he climbed Mount Everest. He was the first Cheyenne River Sioux tribal member to climb Mount Everest. And they had news articles on him, and I was actually hired to make a quilt for him. And this was at our annual Labor Day powwow. I believe it was last year that he came, and the tribe honored him with a presentation of the quilt and, of course, an honor song. And everybody was there that got to go and shake hands with him, and he got to tell his story. It was quite an accomplishment. The other picture is a picture of my daughter and my son there. This was during her graduation, and they did a feather ceremony where the graduates received a feather from their family and, of course, a quilt. Another honoring how we give. There isn't any particular law of how you need to give a quilt. So this gentleman here in the blue and black quilt, he is the downstairs neighbor to my daughters. My daughters went to school in Kansas this past year, and he was their neighbor downstairs, and he just took care of them like his own daughters. And I was very grateful for him. He watched out for them. He was just always there. So when my daughter Raya graduated, I'm wrapping her in a quilt on the other page, or on the other picture. We invited him over to our Airbnb, and we honored him with a quilt, just to say thank you for everything that you have provided for my family, for my girls. And we sang him put him in the middle of the living room and wrapped him in a quilt and said thank you and gave him a song, and he was. So you don't have to be native, is what I'm trying to get at, I guess. The other picture is the reception for my daughter. She graduated Haskell. That quilt was made with the Haskell colors, and you can kind of see the Haskell emblem. So when we make the honoring, we put them in the center of the people, and we wrap them with the quilt, and she was very honored. She was very humbled by all the people that showed up, that traveled to Kansas to celebrate with her. Another way to honor somebody that has passed is we do what we call memorials. And it's usually a year after your loved one passes is when we hold the memorial. And that can include something simple, something that correlates with the person's life. It can be a grand event. This one here in particular is my cousin's stepdad's memorial. So this was just a few weeks ago, or last week maybe. She had ordered, over the past year and a half, ordered different colors of quilts from me, just a couple at a time. So I think we ended up with 5. So her stepdad was a men's traditional fancy dancer. He danced at powwows for competition for I don't know how many years, but he had passed probably a little over a year ago, and her family decided to have this men's traditional fancy dance competition at the powwow. So what they do is they have this, what they call a special during the powwow. They will hire a drum group, and they will, at this particular one, they danced 5 songs. So it's somewhat of a competition. So you dance your 5 songs, and they have judges, and they say, okay, you're out, you're out, you're out. And then they keep going, and then, okay, you're out. And pretty soon you're down to 5 dancers. And then they categorize them. First place gets this, second place. But in this event, all 5 of them got a quilt. I'm not sure what else that they received, but that's another way to honor your loved one. That's a popular way for people that do the powwow circuit. Another memorial besides the powwow is rodeo. I'm not quite sure how it works, but so within the competition, whoever has the highest point ride, I believe, or just a special, I guess, is what. So they give a star quilt. Sometimes they'll add money to the prize. I know that the satin quilt on the far left was for Team Roper, and I'm not quite sure how they decided that he won, but this is the picture that they sent me. Another memorial in honor of my friend's dad was given, the winner of the saddle bronc was given a quilt and a buckle, it looks like, and probably money. So that's another version of a memorial. Another type of memorial would be a feed and giveaway. This is my dad's giveaway when he passed away. For a whole year, we gathered quilts, we made quilts, we bought quilts, and when the day came, we fed the people that came, and we gave everything away. So that is how we judge wealth in our culture. It's not by how much you accumulate, it's by how much you give away. So that's what that represents when I say giveaway, a memorial giveaway. Sometimes families will gather I've seen up to 50 quilts. So they rent the gymnasium and they hang all the quilts up, and they have a feed and honor song, and sometimes they'll have what they call a wiping of the tears ceremony, and that is when you have a ceremony and you say, okay, your times of grieving is over. You need to move on with your life. The top picture is actually a veteran that came home from the service, and he was honored by his family with a quilt and a Lakota name. These are some of the favorite quilts that I like to make is for veterans. This one is actually a Marine quilt, and this will go to the lady that ordered it for her veteran. When I get home, I guess. Baby quilt. And then who I come from. So I am actually a 4th generation, from what I know of, 4th generation seamstress, quilter. My great-grandmother on my father's side, Eudora Traversey, I have quilt blocks of hers that she made out of flour sacks, and I think that's very popular back in those days. She hand embroidered on them. My grandmother, Marcella, she, from what I remember when I was younger, she would come home with these big rolls of satin, shiny fabrics, and she'd lay them out on the living room floor, and pretty soon the next day, my aunts had a prom dress. So she was not, in the beginning, she wasn't really a quilter, but She did make baby quilts, and but what I remember most is the prom dresses that she made for my aunt. My mother is Dene, like I said. She's Navajo. She is from the Weaver clan for the Red Forehead. She has been sewing ever since I can remember. Her graduation gift from her mother was an actual sewing machine. And I remember that machine sitting on the kitchen table very vividly, because when dinner came, I was the one that had to pack it away and put it back up when dinner was over. Yes, so Lakota on my dad's side and Dene on my mother's side. And that's her mother in the picture with her, my grandmother, and my 3 kids. These are some exhibits that I have had over my career, my quilting career. You can see the buffalo quilt. I have a buffalo quilt displayed over in the hall if you want to go check that out. And the eagle quilt and one of my quilt racks. Yeah, and then, okay, now we're back to the display. So these are just quilts that I have made over the years. Unfortunately, I don't get a picture of every quilt. I think that I make probably anywhere from 275 to 300 quilts a year. So when I was just over at the ladies that are doing the appraisals, and I was kind of listening, and then you see the extraordinary quilting. There's no way that I could make that many quilts and do the custom quilting. So this one here, I did freehand on my machine, just took the machine over and freehanded it. This one I did freehand also. So yeah, I find that doing the free motion quilting is a lot faster than the computerized. Which is, this one here is computerized. This one took me forever. This one here is free-handed. And then what to do with all the extra cuttings of the diamonds. I tried to use them, but yeah, I made a couple of bags. And then I have another quilt over in the hall with just the diamonds. So that was kind of extraordinary. If you guys could go check that out. This is a queen size quilt. I really do like to work with what we call sunset colors. That is kind of that's my favorite. Pink, not so much my favorite. Another veteran quilt. This one is custom quilted for, I believe that was like for a raffle. That's another popular thing, is people will raffle quilts. They'll buy a quilt and then they'll raffle it off for whatever event. Police officer quilt. That's another popular item. I think that is screen printed on the corner, if I remember right, with the officer's name. That may have been a funeral quilt. That's another time that you get a quilt, but you probably don't know it. Veteran quilt. And the 4 colors, the black, red, yellow, white, those 4 colors are significant within my culture, probably other cultures also. It represents the 4 cardinal directions. Some say it represents the 4 colors of the 4 races. I don't know, maybe. Another veteran quilt. Sunset colors. I don't remember which one this is, but I've made a few of those, unfortunately. This here was a wall hanging that I won People's Choice at Native Pop. It's a native art market in Rapid City that's held every summer. I entered this into the juried competition. I did not win, but I did win the next day the People's Choice Award. So this is a woman in a headdress, and it is in recognition of one of the ladies that fought at Battle of the Little Bighorn. We always were told that women don't fight, but yes, they did. So she has her shawl and the fringe and the little shells on her dress. I think she even has earrings. Yeah, she does. Oh, and then you can see the horsehair coming off of the war bonnet. Baby quilt. High school graduation quilt. Another sunset one. Baby quilt. And of course, the sunset quilt. Yeah, you can tell that's my favorite. And this was a wall hanging that went to New York City. Prior to it going to New York, my brother saw it and he's like, wow, Bonnie, you need to make that one your logo. So, of course I did. So yes, that's me, Bonnie LeBeau Quilts. Align yourself with the stars. I have a website, Facebook, Instagram. Thank you. Wopila. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. How much do I get for a quilt? It depends on the size. Full size, $3.95 is what I charge. Of course, you could probably go higher than that, but I always like to think that the people that are buying the quilts and what they're doing with it has a lot to play in that price also.
You do all the work yourself?
Up until a couple of years ago, yes, I did. I do have a couple ladies that help me with the basic sewing, and then they'll hand it off to me to make the star, and I do all my own quilting though. Yeah, I do have help with the sewing. You probably all know how it goes when you see a piece of fabric that you just love. Yeah, it's usually the fabric that, with this one here, this is what they call, it's a company in Canada, 49 Design is what they're called, and they specialize in native artists and put their prints into fabric. So I came across this one here, and I just basically just matched the star with the fabric. Kind of did the opposite. Yeah. Thank you.
Do you have do you use a machine to cut your stuff out, or does everybody?
No, I do the rotary cutter, and my elbow can tell you. How many hours a week do I spend sewing? My typical day, I'm usually up and sewing by 6. And then maybe 10 or so, I'll take a break and then do what I have to do. Go check the mail, all the boring stuff. And then back to sewing and quilting. Yeah, it's my passion. People will say, well, don't you get sick of it? No, I don't. So, yeah, it's my passion. Oh, do I prefer a specific type of fabric? It depends on the design. I have done quilts with cotton and satin. So like this one here, I've mixed. You can see there's a satin, the black satin. I've made entirely satin quilts. For me, it doesn't matter. I guess I figure that my grandmother made quilts with flour sacks, so I can make quilts with whatever I want. But like I said, I was with the appraisers earlier, and I'm like, wow, there's so much that goes into a quilt if you want to make it an antique, I guess.
Would you talk a little bit more about when the star quilt came to your people? Was it late 1800s, early?
We kind of traced it back to between 1880, somewhere in there. Like I said, it would have started like on this side of the United States, Wisconsin area, and then made its way further west. So we figured probably about 1880, somewhere in there, maybe earlier. Because the school that my grandmother went to, St. Mary's, or St. Elizabeth's, that was established in 1890, I believe. So we know that they were there in South Dakota at that time. So, yeah.
You mentioned 7 stars and that meant a lot to your people, but your quilts are 8 stars. Can you explain that again?
Just the fact that this is a star.
Oh,
Yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with the points. Yeah, it's just the fact that it's just the one star, and it was easily manipulated into the geometric patterns. She asked if the quilts that were given away at the giveaway were the property of the person that passed away. So for my family, when my grandmother passed away, she had a whole stack of quilts, and she used to say, you can judge your own life by however many times you've been honored with a star quilt. So she had a whole stack. She was a remarkable woman. For her quilts, mostly they went to family members. And then when we had her memorial, we collected the quilts over the years and gave new quilts. Yeah. Did you have a question?
how big is your sewing room?
Well, I've had 4 different sewing spaces over my quilting career. The first one was, of course, in the kitchen. One morning I woke up and my daughters were packing my stuff off the table and they said, you're moving downstairs. So that's what I did. Yeah, and then I moved from basement to the next house basement, and now I have my own quilting space, my own work studio that I just recently moved into over the last couple of months. So that's something new that I'm adjusting to. I don't get to roll out of bed and go downstairs. I have to drive. Yeah. Do I use a long arm? Yes, I have. My very first machine was a Nolting. That's what I used to do the freehand on. And within the last 6 years, I had purchased a Gamel, and that's the computerized. So I have 2 machines. Do I have younger members of my family that I'm teaching? Yeah. Both of my daughters know how to make star quilts. My mother will help me. She doesn't like to, but she will. She's more of a clothing person. So yeah, I have 2 daughters that will help me. They do know how, but they haven't picked it up as a passion. Yeah. Do I use a program to design my work? No, I don't. I did purchase one, but it was taking too long to learn. So this is what I use. I just use my colored pencils and make my designs out on paper if I have to see it on paper. Something like this, though, I'll just use the colors and arrange them and sew them. Nothing really techie about that. She asked how long it takes me to piece a pattern, a quilt. If I were to sit down, start to finish, I could probably finish a quilt in 6 to 8 hours. When my dad passed away, I did one in 4. Yeah, start to finish, yeah. I do the strip method, so I would sew 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 strips all together, and then do one for each section, each line of the diamond, and then you cut them on the diagonal, and then you sew the strips together this way. So then you have one big diamond, and then you sew this diamond against that diamond, this section, this section, this section, this section, and then you put 2 with 4, and then 2 and 2 and then you put your corners in and the borders. Well, thank you everybody. Wopila for having me.
Proceeds from the Great Wisconsin Quilt Show support PBS Wisconsin programming. Your financial gift helps make this event possible. Thank you.